I'm very, very happy to welcome Donald Trump back into Iowa. And you know, you'll know as I do that Donald Trump has made his mark wherever he's gone. And I have this affinity to, I'll just say, give the opportunity to claim as friends a unique individual that has blazed his own trail time and time again, one who never puts his finger in the wind, but puts his brain to it, and his character to it, and his work ethic to it, and his instincts to it. And time after time, when the hand of Donald Trump reached out and touched something, it turned into something good for America. And you can't do that unless you understand Americans and how we think. And that's an intuitive as well as a learned trait. But I wanted to just say a few things, a common cause that we have. And that common cause is, first, we believe in a sovereign America and in the rule of law. And if you look at the pillars of American exceptionalism, the components of why we are this great opportunity country, you can't be that without the rule of law. And if you allow it to be eroded by the President of the United States, primarily by his party, but not exclusively by his party, you see that opportunity in America diminish, and you watch America become a third world country. So there are many reasons for us to secure the border. Rule of law has always been enough for me. But when you add to that the things that are coming at us from across the border, it would be 80 to 90% of the illegal drugs consumed in America, the unaccompanied alien juveniles that are coming in, that are coming at the ages, 83% of them, 15, 16, and 17 years old. Prime gang recruitment age, 80% male, from the six of the most violent countries in the world are south of Mexico. That's a threat to us, but on top of that, we've got ISIS that's been interdicted on our southern border. I talked to Congressman Duncan Hunter a few days ago about that particular piece of evidence, and WorldNet Daily reported that there were another 4 ISIS, 10 reported by Duncan Hunter, 4 reported by WorldNet Daily. That's ISIS seeking to come into the United States, threatening us, and we saw the beheadings in Oklahoma. We've seen the, shall I call it, the paralysis disease, D68, that seems to be in most, if not all, of our states. Happens to be the same places that the unaccompanied alien juveniles have been sent, the same states that they've been sent to. And on top of that, the biggest threat of all is Ebola. And I've heard some of what Donald Trump has had to say about Ebola. I've had a lot to say about that. And I'm interested also in the message that he can deliver here in Iowa, because we know this, that we're here in Iowa, we have the opportunity to offer up planks for the platform for the next President of the United States. If we offer those up and sell them and market them, they've got a chance to be bolted down into those planks into a platform. And when that happens, if that platform, launched with a candidate or 2 on it, sent to New Hampshire, and if they approve of our work and they send our work on down to South Carolina, we have ourselves a president that carries the heart of the heartland values into the Oval Office of the White House. That's all part of what's going on here. This is a national debate taking place in Iowa, and it will accelerate right after the election. So I'm thrilled Donald Trump is here and to support my campaign. And I look forward to the next couple of weeks, and I especially look forward to the vote count at the end and an opportunity perhaps to lend a hand once and do something to help Donald Trump instead of the other way around. Thanks very much. Welcome to Iowa.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, everybody. It's a great honor to be in Iowa. I love Iowa. So many friends, and today I'm here to support Steve King, a special guy, a smart person with really the right views on almost everything. And we don't really have to compare notes because, you know, as he's just speaking, as an example, Ebola, stop the flights. What do you have to do? Stop the flights. And we don't really have to think too much about it because some things are so obvious that you wouldn't even understand the other side. You don't know where they're coming from. But I'm a big supporter of Steve. He's done an amazing job. He's somebody respected all over the country. I mean, you know him from Iowa, but I know him from throughout the country. He's respected all over the country, and it's my great honor to be here today to endorse and to support Steve King. Okay, any questions?
You still have ambitions to run for president?
Well, we're going to see what happens. I mean, right now we have a president that's doing such a poor job, such a horrible job, and we'll see who's running. We're going to see what happens, first of all, in the next month, because it's going to be very interesting. And after that, we'll make a decision sometime after the beginning of the year. But certainly the country is not running well. We're laughed at all over the world, whether you look at China. I mean, we were talking before about ISIS, and Where's China? Where's China helping? Where the money they take out of every place, but they don't put back in. So you take a look at Ebola, where we send 4,000 innocent soldiers, ill-equipped and ill-trained. They never heard the word Ebola 2 weeks ago. And you just say, well, is China helping? Is Russia helping? Are all of these other countries that have taken tremendous amounts of money out of West Africa and Africa generally, where are they? So we're always the one to go in there and do it at tremendous expense. And in the meantime, we have 18 trillion in debt, much of it owed to China. So you look at the kind of things that are going on in this country, and I'll be making a decision sometime later. We have a very interesting election coming up that I can say.
If you choose not to run, what kind of presidential candidate would you be looking for? And is there anybody currently considering it that you might consider supporting?
Well, without going into names, we need somebody very smart and very tough, and we need a great one. Because we're so far behind the 8 ball, good isn't good enough. We need a great president the next time. We have a lot of ground to make up. Tremendous ground has been lost. You look at our military, you look at even what's happened nuclear. You look at, I watched 60 Minutes a month ago. It was an embarrassment where our nuclear weapons, the phones don't work, the weapons don't work. And it was Obama that wanted that to be on. He wanted to display something, and all that came out is that it's almost obsolete equipment. And then you hear Putin all of a sudden spewing the word nuclear. Nobody's gonna mess with us, we're a nuclear power. He probably saw what I saw, which was shocking. So you look at what's happening with our military, you look at what's happening with virtually everything we have. Even our airports, you fly into LaGuardia, you fly into Kennedy, you fly into LAX, they're like third world airports. And then you go to Qatar, and you go to Saudi Arabia, and you go to China, all over China, and you see airports the likes of which we've never seen in this country. So there are a lot of things that could do, and we have tremendous potential, but I want to see someone who's going to make our country great again, which is basically the same thing as Steve.
And are there certain qualities? I mean, you mentioned smart and tough. Are there other things are you looking for somebody who comes from outside of government?
I don't think you have to come from outside of government. It might help because the people inside of government haven't exactly been doing it as president. But it certainly would be, I think it's an avenue that's now open that maybe wouldn't have been open before. But we'll see what happens, and that'll be very interesting. I mean, you're talking really after January 1st, I guess people are gonna see what happens in November, and then they'll take a month and a half and digest everything, and the whole process will start again, and this one for the big one. This is going to be a very, probably not, probably a couple of days, as opposed to a month and a half. But this is going to be an unbelievably important presidential election, there's no question about it. But November will be very exciting and very interesting. And I think that the weight of Obama and the poor job that he's done, and I think that Obamacare, because I have more and more people telling me the premiums, the deductibles are through the roof. And today, amazingly, on the front page of the New York Times, which really doesn't like to cover this, there's a very, very bad story about what's happening with medical and health insurance, and that people just can't afford it anymore, and that the deductibles are so high. I know doctors that are quitting. They said we need 2 and 3 accountants just to take care of it. It's so complicated that they actually have to go out and hire accountants. And people are leaving. They don't have their doctor, they don't have their plan, but they're really finding out that it's so unbelievably expensive. And the one thing, Steve, with the Ebola, there's been so much focus on Ebola that people are a little bit forgetting about Obamacare, but they're not forgetting when the bills come in. And I think that Obamacare is a catastrophe for Democrats running in November.
My
So
bill,
we'll see
for
what happens.
example, my health insurance premium went up $4,400 as a result directly of Obamacare. And it gets a little tiresome to hear about free health insurance for life when your premium was 28% and now it's 47% of the overall cost. And that's after-tax dollars for me. I introduced legislation that can live with or beyond Obamacare that provides for 100% deductibility of everybody's health insurance premium. When you've got 20.5 million people in America that are compelled to buy Obamacare by law, but they have to do it with after-tax dollars and compete with people that do it with before-tax dollars, that's fundamentally wrong, and it's got to be corrected. But I'd say also to any Republican that's running for office anywhere in America at any level, The full 100% repeal of Obamacare has got to be our mission. The bill that I wrote to repeal Obamacare, 40 words long, has been voted on by every Republican in the House and Senate. Everyone voted to repeal Obamacare. That language needs to go back up on the board. A majority in the United States Senate puts that bill on the president's desk instead of Harry Reid's desk drawer. That's a great place to start the debate for the next president of the United States.
For both of you, what are your thoughts on President Obama's new Ebola czar, Ron Klain, a career political operative who has no medical experience?
Well, he has no experience in terms of medical, in terms of health, in terms of anything. People were shocked by it. Even a lot of Democrats are angered by it. He's the wrong person. And do we need more people? Do we need more bureaucracy, for the sake of any other word? Do we need more? He's the wrong person. He's not going to do the job. And previous to him was a total disaster what was going on. So, but you know, we have the machinery set up. What you do is you need the right leadership. And that starts really at the top, at the presidential level. So he's been criticized not by Steve King and Donald Trump. He's been criticized by many Democrats. That's not the right choice.
He's the Ebola spin czar is what he is, only he would have named him that if it hadn't been for the other competition within the White House. And here's what's appalling, is that I've watched this from this perspective of sitting in Congress, especially in committee, for 6 years. And I've watched the representatives of the Obama administration come before us, often cabinet members, always under oath. And when I ask them point blank questions, I see the calculation in their eyes. Is it more painful to tell the truth, or is it more painful if I get caught telling a lie? And I watch them as they calculate their responses to us. I do not believe them any longer. When they came to a classified briefing on Benghazi, just days after Susan Rice had told lies to America, and have the Secretary of State tell us the same lies that Susan Rice had told America the Sunday before. And then we see Tom Frieden step up and he says, well, you can't get it on a bus, but you might give it on a bus. The things don't add up. And when they tell us that they know how to control Ebola and how it's contracted, but the top healthcare professionals that go over there, God bless them for going over there and doing what they do. But if they don't know how they contracted it, how can they tell us we cannot? And so there never was a logical reason not to shut down those flights of about 150 people a day coming into the United States. There's no economic reason so compelling that we should expose ourselves to that kind of virus. We should do quarantines on people that need to come back to America. That would be American citizens. The 21-day quarantine, there are a few good places to do that. That would be the prudent thing to do. And I think Tom Frieden needs to step down. We needed someone who could be a medical person that could stand at a podium at a press conference and tell the American people the truth for a change instead of a political response.
Sort of interesting when you hear Frieden over the last week talking about the reasons that he didn't want to do this, what we're talking. It was absolutely incredible. Sounded like the crazy professor. He didn't know what he was saying. I don't know, I think he was probably told, you have to say this. In other words, you know, let the flights keep going. And there was just no way he could justify it because it was the weirdest thing that anybody's heard. As far as the president's concerned, there has never been a president that has told so many lies. And you talk about, I mean, we can go department after department, or you can just start with Obamacare, with doctors, and keep your plan. Because people are getting wiped out from their doctors and they're getting wiped out from their plan, and what is happening is a lot more money and a huge deductible. I mean, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 deductibles. People are never going to be able to get anything. So they're really complaining, and a lot of doctors, by the way, and I have a lot of friends that are doctors, they're leaving their practice and they're closing up their practice, and that's a very serious thing because we need more doctors in this country. And then on top of it, you have this big mess with Ebola and the incompetence with which it's been handled. So we'll see what happens, but we have a very interesting election coming up. And one thing I know, people love this man right over here. That I can tell you.
What's your prediction for the election? Do you think Republicans will take control of the Senate?
I think so. I think so. I think that especially over the last 3 or 4 days, it was looking a little bit tighter 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Now all of a sudden, a lot of the Republicans, where the race was getting tight, they seem to be surging forward. And I think that's a direct, indirect relationship to how bad a job President Obama is doing. I really see that. So it just looks like they're back on track to do very well, and I would think that they would, in fact, do very well.
If I would add a couple of Senate races that were hanging in the balance that looked pretty bad for Republicans would be Pat Roberts in Kansas and Scott Brown in New Hampshire. And if you watch those races, they were hanging in. I mean, Pat Roberts' numbers were terrible, and then he decided that he was going to start to emphasize border security. And I think he picked that up off of Scott Brown's playbook, actually, because Scott Brown had been driving that agenda in New Hampshire for, I'd say at least 6 weeks before Pat Roberts picked it up. Both of them have come back in the polls, and both of them look a lot better today. I'm not ready to predict that they will win, but I will predict you that if they don't, it will be very, very close. I'm glad to see that. If you go all the way to New Hampshire and you see that they understand that we're vulnerable, especially on our southern border, that's a message then. If they hear that in New Hampshire, they hear that everywhere in America. We've got to decide who comes into America and what comes into America. If they know that in New Hampshire, we know it in Iowa. The next president needs to understand that too.
Well, border security is a very big issue, and we either have a country or we don't. And people are just flooding across, and Obama doesn't want to do anything about it. You know, for a while they thought, well, maybe he just lost control, but he's not doing anything. And that is such a big issue and such an important issue for the country. So again, it's going to have, I think, a very profound effect on the elections come November.
We want Sergeant Tamarisi back too, just to think of it. And I know Donald's been very vocal about
Very
that.
strong.
5 minutes of Barack Obama's time and we'd have Sergeant Tamarisi back. And I've said that now for months. But I just had a new idea for him. I don't know why it didn't occur to me before. And that would be this. One thing that would bring Sergeant Tamarisi back, if we would send the people back that actually are citizens of the country he now is incarcerated in. If the president accelerated that legal process and turned that up, it'd only take a few days of watching that happen, and the Mexicans would say, hold it, no, we can't go any further with that. We're going to give you back your sergeant and his guns.
What's interesting, Sergeant Tamarisi is the only person that can't get across our border. It's the only one. And it's an incredible thing.
Sad.
The president, I don't know if he's made the call. It doesn't sound like he has. I don't know if it's gross incompetence. I can guarantee you if we had the right person in office, one phone call and that man is released. One phone call. So it's just inconceivable. And frankly, if he did make the call, in certain ways it's even worse because they just don't have any respect. In Mexico, they don't have any respect. Now, I've been reading about, and in fact I saw on a major program, one of your companies and many of your companies from Iowa, they go to Mexico. Mexico's going to become our number one. They're sending a fortune. I mean, they're making a fortune off the United States. By the way, we're not making a fortune off of them. The power we have over Mexico is incredible, and we can't get Sergeant Tamarisi back. It's inconceivable. One phone call by the right person, and it doesn't have to be a long call. It's a 2-minute call. Believe me, he'd be coming back. It's an insult. It's disgraceful. It's disgusting. And it just shows the lack of leadership of President Obama. That man is still there. Nobody can even believe that he's there. People, the press, other people, we talk about it. We've been talking about this for such a long time. Inconceivable that Mexico is just almost like arrogant. They're saying no. And they take our jobs. And they don't send us, we send them tremendous amounts of money. And then on top of it, the people that go into Mexico, you know, if you come from other countries in South America, Latin America, you go through Mexico, you can't stay in Mexico. They're very tough. They're very, very tough. What they do is they just whisk them across the border. And then we take them. And it is a tremendous problem. But that the sergeant is not released is, to me, incredible. And just gross incompetence.
And it is also, in my wanderings through the internet, I came across some Spanish language press releases that I had to have interpreted for me. And I found out that there was a press conference that took place between the President of Mexico and the President of Guatemala about a month ago or a little more. And they had reached an agreement, a memorandum of understanding, that Mexico would issue transit permits to Guatemalans who were on their way through Mexico to enter the United States illegally. And so they did a press conference and bragged about this, undermining the rule of law in America by collaborating in Central America. And they also said, the President of Mexico said that he would hope to negotiate a similar agreement with Honduras and El Salvador. that's the kind of thing that goes on, and that doesn't show up in the press here, but I'm glad we have an internet. You can find out some of these things.
Well, it's true, and just to finish on Mexico, that and the drug lords all over Mexico that are sending the drugs in, and we're, going through hell over the drugs, and they are sending them in, and, by the way, shooting our people and killing our people. So it's, to me, incredible that that situation is taking place.
Representative King, what does it do for you standing next to Donald Trump in northwest Iowa?
Well, it makes me feel good, so I can't think why that would be a bad thing at all.
Well, it's a long way from Manhattan to Cairo.
Well, you know what I learned? September 11th, 2001, when I saw what happened in New York, and I remember the pictures of those flags hanging out of those brownstones all the way up and down the street. I remember a picture of an African-American man covered with dust and a tear that washed that dust down his cheek all the way off his chin. We became really one America on that day, and we ought to be paying attention to what goes on in Manhattan, and I like it when Manhattan knows what goes on here in Iowa. That's been part of my job, is to drop around different places in the country, tie us together, to go to New Hampshire, go to South Carolina. I was in Gettysburg a couple of days ago, and part of that is I could stand here in Iowa, and I could go back and forth through 382 towns, which I've been to every single one of them, I would add, and I could meet people and talk to them and shake their hand and pump their gas and wash their windshield and do all those things and maybe get reelected this coming November. That isn't good enough. We've got to take Iowa values, the heart of the heartland values, and take them to the rest of the country. They come to me on the floor of the House and they will say, what do they think in Iowa? Well, if they care from the East Coast and the West Coast what we think in Iowa, we better care what they think in Manhattan too. Let's tie this country together, but let's restore the pillars of American exceptionalism so we go the place that Donald Trump and I want to see this country go. And we have to go there together. I think we all know that.
Congressman King, you like to pheasant hunt, and I know, Mr. Trump, you're into golf, and yet we have a president that plays so much golf, and there's a disconnect, and it just seems rude. Can you guys just elaborate on the critique of just the absence of leadership in all these crucial times in America right now?
Well, I've just watched that, and I come to the word feckless, and it's the most consistent adjective I use to describe our president. I mean, it's irresponsible, and what is his vision for this country? He must think now he's president of the world, that he's going to treat people in Africa as if they were American citizens, and somehow we can't define this American sovereignty or this American citizenship. I watched as he's pitted people against each other down the lines of the divisions that are God-given characteristics, and so when I see that, and I'm looking for where we need to go as a country, I want to pull us all together under those principles that build America. That's freedom of speech, religion, the press, the right to keep and bear arms, whether it's to pick up a shotgun and shoot a pheasant or pick up a 7-iron and discipline your husband. We need to, I had to throw that in there. You're all thinking about golf. That wouldn't happen with Donald Trump. But you know who I'm thinking of. And but that's not the right to bear the arm. The right, you can bear it, but you don't wield it. That's the difference. And but whether it's the right to keep and bear arms, or whether it's the right to pick up a golf club, whether it's the right to enjoy your recreational time, but the president seems to go off on that recreational time at the expense of the American people. And when he was wheels up, heading out of D.C., flying to Las Vegas the morning when there was still fires burning and still a little scrap going on in Benghazi, that was wrong. That was feckless, and that hurt our country when that happened.
Well, I have to say, I have two sons, and you probably know this. They're very good members of the NRA. They love the NRA, and they're hunters. They love to hunt, and they're really good at it. They're championship, and I'm more of a golfer, and as a golfer, I will tell you, I own many, many hotels and buildings all over the world, and I also own many very successful golf clubs. Just bought Turnberry in Scotland, one of the great homes of the Open Championship, and so I understand golf. I love golf. I think it's great, but there's a time and a place for everything. When one of the wonderful people from our country just had his head cut off, and the president gives a news conference and literally is taking off his jacket to get onto the golf course and to play golf minutes later after that news conference, I think that was absolutely outrageous and absolutely terrible. And a thing like that should never have happened. And I don't know who's representing from a PR standpoint. I don't know who's representing him, period. I don't know if he's just so arrogant that he says, I can do whatever I want to do. But here we have somebody whose head was just chopped off. And then the president says, I'm going to be playing golf. And he's literally got his golf shirt on and he's wearing, he just wants to get out to that course really fast. And he's played over 200 rounds already. That's a lot of golf, I have to tell you. I know a lot about golf. That's a lot of golf. That might be more than Tiger's played over the last period of time. So we have a real problem in this country. We have a lack of leadership. We have a president that is not doing a good job, and a lot of people say he's worse than Jimmy Carter. I never thought I'd be saying that in my lifetime, but they say he's worse than Jimmy Carter. So it's very sad, but I can tell you somebody that's doing a fantastic job, and that's Steve King. And I just want to thank everybody for being here. It's an honor, and I love the people of Iowa. I've been here many, many times, and I'll be here many times in the future. I think you also have a great governor. I think Terry Branstad's done a fantastic, really fantastic job. He's a great guy and a great governor, and he will be setting records pretty soon in terms of his tenure, I hope. But I've gotten to know him very well, and a terrific, terrific person. And the thing I love about the people of Iowa is they are workers. They work. They love to work. And frankly, the country needs to start thinking that way, or we're going to be in big, big trouble. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here.